When the people of Egypt in December of last year and in January of this year rose up, took to the streets with the inspiration of the Tunisian people's uprising, and occupied Tahrir Square and stayed in Tahrir Square until the US-backed dictator Mubarak was overthrown, despite the fact that the state did everything they could, the US State Department did everything they could, Egyptian thugs did everything they could, the Egyptian police forces did everything they could to remove the occupiers from Tahrir Square to defeat that movement in Egypt. The people were able to prevail, and in fact, at one point in that struggle, completely drove the police from the streets. They completely drove the police from the streets in Egypt, all over Egypt. At the end of that struggle, workers were shutting down their factories and going on strikes and joining that struggle. That is what we mean when we say we believe we're in a new period of struggle in the world and here in the United States. That it's not an abstract thing, it is a thing that is happening all around us. When in Wisconsin, workers there, teachers, nurses, other public sector workers, non-public sector workers, non-union workers, students as young as junior high school age rose up when an anti-worker bill supported by the billionaire Koch brothers and many other billionaires and put forward by reactionary Governor Scott Walker rose up and occupied the Capitol. Nobody planned that. No socialist from Chicago drove up to Madison, or no socialist in Madison. No one from Cuba came up to Madison and said, let's have a revolt, let's have an uprising and occupy the Capitol in Madison to not only oppose this bill, but take over the Capitol building. Anybody who went up there saw that the people who were engaged in that struggle took over the Capitol building and set up their own, if not government, their own people's assembly in order to stop the bill. For anybody who went up there, it was incredible. Nothing like that has happened in the United States in decades. And not only that, at the beginning of that struggle, the workers and students were raising the Egyptian flag. On their banners and placards, they associated Mubarak with Walker. That's what we mean when we're in the midst of a new struggle. When the sister here in New York said that the Troy Davis struggle sparked the Occupy Wall Street struggle, or was part of that, that's what it means that we're in a new struggle. When people from across communities and people internationally are seeing themselves in the struggles of each other. When the struggle to occupy Wall Street began, it certainly had something to do with the occupation that happened in Egypt and the occupation that happened in Madison. And that struggle in New York, that it's become a national and global struggle against Wall Street, only got stronger when the state tried to repress it. It only got stronger when they arrested people. It only got stronger when they maced people. It only got stronger when they ran over people in the street. People have come out time and time again in New York City to support Occupy Wall Street. When Bloomberg and the New York City police had amassed in the early morning hours to shut down Occupy Wall Street, people responded. Thousands of people filled the square and made the mayor and the police forces back off in the center of world capitalism. Do you think the billionaires want a bunch of workers and people from oppressed communities, women and LGBT people, socialists and communists, pacifists and liberals, occupying Wall Street and standing up to the powers that be, and when they sick their police forces on them, being able to resist that and standing their ground? Of course they don't, sisters and brothers. But when that happened, when the repression happened in New York City, all of a sudden, like a wildfire, there are Occupy movements all over the country. And everywhere around the country where the state has tried to repress the movement, including here in Chicago, when that happens, the people respond. You know when Occupy Chicago went from 200, 300 people to 5,000 and 3,000 and 10,000 people of supporters coming out to it? It's when the police, right, moved the beginning Occupy movement here off of the sidewalk. That's when, right, that's when the movement grew. When 250 people or 200 people were arrested in Grant Park attempting to set up the Occupy movement here in Chicago, instead of, right, seeing it as a defeat, the very next weekend, thousands of people came out to camp. Another 130 people got arrested. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about that we're in a new period. And I don't even have time to go over what happened in Oakland, but I'll say this. They brought out much more repression in Oakland. And what happened? I mean, not only did people respond in the following nights after people were tear gassed, right? After people were, after grenades were lobbed into people trying to, you know, the anti-war veteran who got shot in the head with a tear gas canister fell. Immediately, dozens of people rushed to his aid. What did the police do? They lobbed grenades at the people rushing in to help. They shot people with rubber bullets. The oppression in Oakland has been a police repression unlike against a mass assembly demonstration, unlike anything we've seen in the United States in a long time. And what did the people do? The people responded by shutting down the Port of Oakland. I'll say that again. The people responded by shutting down the Port of Oakland. We are in a new period of struggle, sisters and brothers. And why are people rising up? Is it because we wake up every morning and we want to fight with the cops? Is that why people are coming out on the street right now? I mean, people don't necessarily wake up in the morning thinking they want to do that. They're coming out in the streets and it's very instructive what happened in Egypt, for some of the same very reasons that the people in Egypt came out in the streets. In Egypt, food prices are unaffordable and the youth can't find jobs. Literally, the youth cannot find jobs in Egypt. Food prices are skyrocketing and they're facing some of the other problems we have. That's why people took to Tahrir Square. Because in a worldwide system of plenty, there is still so much unmet need. In the richest country in the history of the world, all over the US, but for example in Chicago, 1 in 5 people in Chicago experience food insecurity every year. And food insecurity means I don't know where I'm going to get my next meal. That's the technical definition of it, right? What does it mean that 1 in 5 people in Chicago, a wealthy city, actually of unimaginable wealth if you're even from 200 years ago back in history, cannot feed 1 out of 5 people? In the city of Chicago, the official unemployment rate is 10%. And we all know to double that because they don't count a lot of people in the official unemployment numbers. So 20% of the people in Chicago are unemployed, and for youth, it's twice that. What kind of society do we live in where there's so much wealth, but 1 in 5 people in Chicago can't find a job? When that's the one, I mean, let's break it down. We need to eat to survive as a species, and 1 in 5 people can't get food if they need it in Chicago or have a hard time getting it. And in a capitalist society, we need a job in order to get food, and 1 in 5 people can't get a job. That's why people are rising up. That's why people are occupying their cities. That's why people are occupying the Port of Oakland. And you know what? Our general message to the Occupy movement is, if you can't afford education, if the fees are too high, if you have to take $100,000 in loan out in order to get through college, or they don't offer the classes that you need for your degree, well, then we believe that students should occupy their campuses. That they have every single right in the world to occupy their campuses. Right now, if you're getting evicted from your home because you can't pay the mortgage, because capitalism has laid you off, or you're getting evicted from your apartment because you can't pay the rent, well, you have the right to occupy your home, and your neighbor should help you. And the PSO will help you too. You should occupy your home. If workers can't find jobs, if they're attacking your union, or if they're trying to make you work longer hours, or they're trying to decrease your wage, or again, you can't find a job, well, then we should occupy some workplaces and give people jobs, right? People have the right to occupy, to seize the means of production even, I'll say it, the means of production, when the means of production are providing the things they need. And that's capitalism, right? Capitalism is a system, and it's clearer to see now than ever before, where the billionaires get all the wealth through exploiting the rest of us. And if they can't make a profit off us, we don't get a job, we don't get a health care, and maybe we should occupy some hospitals, right? We don't get education, we don't get food, we don't get a home, we don't get the things we need. unless the capitalist vultures can make a profit off of us. And that's why people are occupying, and we say yes to the Occupy movement. I mean, we say yes to have workers in control of the wealth of society. But as much and to the extent that people can build on this movement, help it grow, and take it further, and by that, let's take it the furthest. If people who are the most oppressed in the society, the African American community, the Latino community, the immigrant community, if control over their communities is the way forward to independence, then occupy your community and we'll be with you too.